The goal of this video is to install an FPV camera on the Furibee F36 mini drone. Now, there are a lot of videos where people did the same thing, but there was one by Toronto RC where he actually, instead of putting the camera on top, he put the camera mounted in the front because he noticed that there's space between the flight controller board of the drone and the battery. And he wound up getting a camera, which is the AKK-A5, which is the same one I have here, because it has a separate transmitter from the camera so that you can mount the camera away from the transmitter. First things first, I want to make sure that the camera works before I start soldering things together. So I have the Furibee battery. Problem is, this camera does not have the right connectors for the Furibee battery. So what I did was I cut away a little piece of the plastic here so that I exposed the prongs on both sides. And I'm going to try to just touch them to the battery to see if we can get some reaction from the camera. Make sure you have positive red on top, positive red on top on the other side, and let's see what happens. There we go. We've got lights on the camera. But we don't know if it's fully functional. We know that it's getting juice. Now we're going to test the camera with power to see if it's actually transmitting. So to do this, I use a USB on-the-go FPV viewer. So this is a receiver. It plugs into your phone, and if you use an app, you can receive a signal that's transmitted from one of these cameras on 5.8 gigahertz. So let's test it. So to test it, I have a phone with several different apps. A lot of people like Go FPV. That didn't work for me. FPV Viewer and OTG View worked better for me. So I'm going to connect the receiver to the phone using the supplied cable. We're connected. We'll use it. Let's try holding down the button, and it's scanning. There we go. We got signal. A little wild and woolly, but it works. So now we can solder. So to prep for soldering, I'm going to disconnect this wire, which is the extension for the camera. I'm actually going to use this because if I make a mistake, I'll still have plenty of wire left, and I won't be screwing up the original wire that's hard soldered to the transmitter. The canopy comes off pretty easy. If you could see, there's a little black plastic nub that sticks out there. Pull it over. On the other side you have the same thing, and just lift it off. Those two tabs, those two holes go through these two tabs. This is the antenna, which there's a later mod where you can kind of stick it out or stick it up through the canopy. And the battery plugs into here. So I'm going to make sure I have the right connectors and then solder these ends to here. Now I want to make sure I've got the right positive and negative, so we'll see where the battery plugs in underneath. It could only go in one way. So now I've got the red positive is on this side. So when I solder it in, I'm going to want the red on that side. And actually, that's going to be another test we'll do right now. Let's just see if we get lights on the camera. There we go. There we go. Once again, let's make sure we've got the correct on the left side should be the red wire. Let's see if we get anything here. And it works. So that's how I need to solder the wires on. So let's unplug this. We definitely do not want the battery connected while we're soldering. And I think I'm going to mark that side with a little red, just to make sure I don't make a mistake later. In fact, I'll do that right now. There we go. So now that we know everything works, I'm going to cut these ends off here. Don't need that piece. And I've seen that you can just strip down these wires with your fingernail. And sure enough, it's right. Let's see if we could tin these wires. Almost. There we go. Now we can solder them onto the board. Think about where you want the wires to go. If I solder them this way, I've got to bend them back around. If I solder it this way, they're going to already be facing forward, which is, I think, where I want them to go. And since I've tinned the wire, I should just be able to heat it and connect it. That one looks good. I'll try to get the other one on there now. Boy, this is tough. Actually, I don't think I need that. Actually, I will. Yes. Why aren't the lights constantly on? Oh shoot, because that's not good. Solder came off. Alright, hopefully I just didn't short everything out. Okay. Let's try this one again. Let's see if we can make this work. Alrighty. Okay, now I'm going to hit this terrible soldering job with some hot glue. Just to make sure these things don't touch or short in any way. It's going to be a lot, and it's going to be probably as ugly as my soldering job. There we go. Now I need to tuck the transmitter inside, connect it up, and mount the camera. Okay, I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to get this in there, but let's take a look. I also realized when I was hot gluing I had to make sure I didn't cover that screw that's underneath my new wires, because there are two screws, one there and one there, that hold the flight controller in place. See if we could pop up the board a little bit more. Yes, so we're only being held down by those wires. I do not want to break them. Now I saw in Toronto RC's video, he covered this with electrical tape so as not to cause a short by touching anything over there. I think that's a great idea. So let's do the same. There we go. Now I'm going to want the camera to face front, and I guess I will now have the antenna facing back. See if this works. There we go. When the battery's inside, we will still have space. So if I could have the wires come out from the bottom as opposed to the top, I think that would be better. So let's remember that the yellow wires are all the way on the right side. So when I go to reattach, that won't be an issue. There we go. I can also probably tuck this wire through the bottom as well. Now we need to reconnect this. I could probably do it pushing it up through here, connecting it, and then pushing it back down. Seems good. Let's see if we can get that screw in there. One down. One to go. And there we have it. I had an idea. Ran the power wires all the way around, connecting them here, because there is clearance underneath due to the bottoms of the caps on the motors. And I'm just going to hot glue it to the battery cage. See how sturdy that is. Ah, looks pretty good. Next, mount the camera. I just want to see how much clearance I need. I don't want these ducts to bend when the camera's in place. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And it looks like the camera can fit all the way up to the nose, right here, of the canopy. So if I get a piece of foam, and I'm using the filler from the camera package, just want to get a piece that will be that thickness. We'll go with this outer piece. Cut it down, see how it fits. I could trim off the bottom because the less weight on the front, the better. Using very imprecise measurements because I have plenty to fall back on if I make a mistake. So I've hit the top with hot glue to secure the camera, and a little dab at the bottom. Now I can take off the lens, and everything looks relatively straight. I'm not bending the ducts, and the camera is slightly protected by the ducts if it's going to hit something, rather than having the camera stick out. And also, the less further out the camera is, the less weight there is up front to unbalance this drone while flying. So now let's see how it flies.